Okay, welcome back, one and all. Thanks for joining us promptly again. We're going to move straight on to our first panel session of the conference, the title of which is Building Good Athletes and Better People. And I'm going to hand the reins over to Krista Kokchon-Pola, who's the Director of Partnerships and Strategy at GoodCore. Now, GoodCore is a social impact consulting team which works with some of the most high-profile organizations like Dick's Sporting Goods, for example. Krista's background stretches from being Chief Girl Experience Officer for Girl Scouts USA. Krista's worked with Nike, with the WNBA, and is coach of a YMCA soccer team to boot. Krista, thanks very much. I hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Great, so our first panel is going to be on youth sports. And I'm going to start by introducing our speaker. So Jim Thompson. Jim is a founder and chief executive officer of Positive Coaching Alliance, a nonprofit with the mission to create a movement to transform the culture of youth sports so that all youth athletes have a positive character-building experience. For more than 10 years, Jim was director of the Public and Global Management program at Stanford Graduate School of Business, where he also taught courses in leadership and nonprofit issues. Since its founding in 1998, Positive Coaching Alliance has developed a network of 200 trainers across the U.S. who will deliver more than 3,000 workshops for youth, sports leaders, coaches, parents, and athletes this year. Let's take a look at your video to be more familiar with your work.
The most important thing that kids and people want from us is that we care about them as a person, and to teach them that you do not have your self-worth connected to your skill level in something. They're two separate issues. You're a beautiful human being, you're fantastic, and that's it, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're ranked, number 250,000 in the world or number one, that does not matter.
Yes, there are expectations. Yes, there are great demands. But yes, we realize you're a human being.
A lot of times what they need is love and just the positive reinforcement.
This is something we all are in together as a family.
If you can be positive about what they're doing out there, they will listen.
I can get far more out of my players if I'm doing it with a smile on my face, with energy in my voice. I'm being clear in what I want from them, and I'm letting them know that I believe in them.
Being positive on a daily basis, you have a choice. You make a choice of, the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. You make a choice of bringing negative or positive to a meeting, to a relationship, to a basketball court, or to you.
PCA is one of the greatest organizations that I've ever been affiliated with.
I think having fun creates good team chemistry.
I get a better response, better effort.
We're going to be in their corner. We're going to be supportive.
Because I am demonstrating through my positivity, my joy, my excitement, that I believe in them.
It is crucial for coaches to send that message.
Every moment is a teaching moment.
You can help a child or a person believe in themselves. It's everything.
You can leave now? Yeah, absolutely. Jim, thanks for being with us. I think that's a perfect embodiment of what we're going to be talking about on this panel. Next, I will welcome Keith Johnson. So Keith Johnson was born, raised, and educated in South Central Los Angeles and studied at UCLA and Biola University. His desire to make more of an impact in the lives of youth led him to work with National Family Life and Education Center's Rites of Passage program. In 2005, Keith and Karen Johnson started the Southern California Falcons Youth Football and Cheerleading Program with the goal of providing kids in the community a safe place to play. However, they quickly realized the needs of the children far exceeded that of a safe place to play. In the spring of 2007, the program became Falcon Youth and Family Services, a sports-based youth development organization focusing on hunger relief, academic enrichment, character development, and health and wellness. Over 1,800 kids have called him coach through his years, including the impressive human who just inspire all of us, Kaylin Moore. Thank you for joining us, Keith. Lastly, we've got Jamal Adams. Jamal is the varsity head boys basketball coach at Loyola High School, where he is also the director of equity and inclusion and a social science teacher. As a coach, Jamal has twice been named CIF Division Coach of the Year, as well as being awarded the prestigious National Double Goal Coach of the Year award given by the Positive Coaching Alliance. In his 12 years as head coach, the Cubs have won 259 games, 7 league titles, have been ranked in the top 25 nationally 4 times, earned 5 state tournament berths, and 1 CIF Southern Section title. He is spearheading the Equity and Inclusion Initiative at Loyola, which is grounded in the care for the whole person and has been established to cultivate a culture of awareness and understanding of and for the other. But wait, because his coaching and education career started after a 10-plus year career in finance, where he led teams at Merrill Lynch, UBS, and had a meteoric rise to the level of vice president before the age of 30. And if we go way back, we'd find him as an all-Ivy basketball player for Columbia University. And oh, by the way, since we're here at LMU, it's important to note that along his journeys, he earned a master's here and has been inducted into the International Honor Society Kappa Delta Pi for his academic performance. Thank you for all of us, for all of you joining us today. So I'm going to get straight into questions, but we're going to save the last 10 minutes to hear questions from all of you. But let's start. Jamal, you know, some people are so inspired by the experiences that they have growing up that they spend the rest of their lives trying to make sure as many people as possible have those experiences. That feels like your story, but is that true? And tell us about your high school experience and your coach.
No doubt about it. I think when I think about why I'm sitting here today, it's because I had so many great teachers, coaches, whatever you want to call them, starting with my folks, most certainly. And I was also blessed. My grandfather coached in the NFL when I was a kid, so I spent a lot of time going to camp with him. And I always watched him. You know, you think of the NFL as, you know, maybe hyper-masculine type of a space. And I always saw my grandfather coach, you know, the best of the best, Barry Sanders and guys like that, with a calm voice, with a caring nod, with a attention to detail. And candidly, he was my hero. And so it started there, and then I was very blessed to go to Loyola, where I teach and coach at now, and I played for a gentleman named Bill Thomason, who played basketball here at Loyola U before it was LMU. And I think he set a space for me as well to learn how to care for the whole kid. You know, I felt like he cared not only about how well I set a screen or rebound, but how well I did at school, my faith. Did I have an activist mind? Did I look at the community and see need? And did I get involved in those type of things? And so in my own practice as a teacher and a coach, it's imperative to me to, one, really get to know the young men that I coach. Two, I do a lot of spending time trying to get to know what they want to improve them. I talk to them a lot about, like right now we're in the summer session, about what are your goals for the summer? What do you want to get better at? And how can I be a conduit to that improvement? And so I try to get buy-in very much from building a personal relationship.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And Keith, when you got started, were you just trying to coach a sport? Or did you always know that what you were doing was way bigger than sports?
I always knew that we wanted to do something much more than sports. I had the privilege of being mentored by a gentleman by the name of Ron Johnson, who's the founder and the creator of the 10-Point Rites of Passage program. And we service kids in long-term foster care, particularly those who live in group homes. One of the most successful places where the teaching took place was actually in martial arts. We would meet with the boys on Tuesdays, the girls on Thursdays, and it was there that the instructor was able to really get the attention of the young people. And I'm like, this is a wonderful place for kids to learn. And so when we started the youth football program, we knew instinctively, again, because of the training that I have through Ron Johnson, that this would also mirror a rites of passage type program, that we would utilize the social capital that came along with coaching to actually address some of the key issues that our babies face. That I knew first and foremost that our kids attended some of the most challenged schools in LA. I knew that many of our kids lack proper values and characters because it's no longer being passed down. And I also knew that they needed to feel a sense of love and a sense of safety. So we decided from the very beginning that we would have defined outcomes, that we would challenge them to do well in school, not simply by words, but we would use tools and instruments to make that happen. That character wasn't very important to them becoming a whole-rounded individual. So we instilled those values. That was part of our community that somehow we just stopped teaching. We call them, our thought is teaching new school kids old school values. To never get too busy for God, or baby get a good education, respect your elders at all times, start a grown folks conversation, keep your hands on yourself, all money ain't good money, dress like you have some self-respect. Man, I wish they would be back in the house when the street lights come on. But those are the things that we stopped teaching our kids. And we knew that if there was anyone that would get that message across, that would also help the parents get the message across, it would be a coach. A coach could tell the kid, look, you got to be in bed at 9. We have a game early in the morning. At 8:30, the dude's in the bed. So if you have that much influence over a kid, what are you going to use that for? And so we decided that we would use, again, the social capital that came along with coaching to address some of the challenges that our babies needed.
Yeah. Well, we can see the power of that in combination with an amazing parent in Kaylin Moore.
Yes.
So it's wonderful to see a product of your coaching and of great parenting as well. Jim, you were at Stanford University in a position most people would covet. Then you went off and started your own nonprofit that had to put you at a little financial and personal risk. So I know there was something driving you. What was it?
Well, my wife and I have been on the periphery of a church in Washington, D.C. for many years called the Church of the Savior. Gordon Cosby started it in 1947, died just a few years ago at the age of 99 or something, and a very visionary guy. And I once was attending a church service there in Washington, D.C., and his wife, Mary Cosby, gave a talk or gave a sermon, and she talked about the calling. And she said, how do you know when you're being called to something? One is it comes back again and again. Second, it seems like it's impossible. And third, it's downwardly mobile. And you figure,
sounding familiar?
If it's a job that's going to pay you more, it's probably not. It could be a calling too, I guess. But anyway, I just saw. I worked with in a school for emotionally disturbed kids in St. Paul, Minnesota. Very troubled kids, very hard to deal with, and brilliant geniuses really who started that school. Nobody ever used the term organizational or team culture then, but they created a culture of relentless positivity. And every time those kids made just a little bit of movement in the right direction, they got reinforced and they got better. They went back to their schools. We worked with the principals and the teachers there to continue that positivity. I met my wife. We got married, and 7, 8, 9 years later, I'm a business student at Stanford. My son is starting to play youth sports. It's like, oh my God, there's so much negativity. And at the beginning, it was all about performance. These kids are not performing very well because there's so much pressure on them, there's so much negativity. But then once I got into it and I realized there's no better place to teach character. Our tagline is very similar to this conference: better athletes, better people. And that's what sports should be. If it's not doing that, it is a huge missed opportunity.
So would you say you were compelled to start that organization because you felt at a certain point that youth sports was broken?
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't think of it that way as much as just a missed opportunity. We say that there's an endless procession of teachable moments in every practice, every game. You win by a lot, you lose by a lot, you win at the last second, you lose at the last second. There's a teachable moment there if the coach is looking for it to use that to build character. So it wasn't so much that it was broken as like, wow, all these opportunities to teach kids life lessons are being missed because of a win-at-all-cost mentality.
Got it. Great, thanks. So Jamal, one of your players said, and I quote, "He's been more important off the court than on the court because he's really showed me what it takes to be successful and how to be a great man." Your former coach called you a man for others and said it's kind of now become your life's mission. Is that true? Tell us about your mission and why it drives you.
Thank you. Yeah, those comments are obviously awe-inspiring. I think first, I just want to be involved, right? So, again, I think being involved with our students and our student athletes is obviously a time investment. But beyond that, it's also one of the heart. Like you have to, I always talk to our guys about being authentic. Like try to be the best version of yourself, and that we're oftentimes talking about trying to take down the mask. We all carry these masks into different situations, and because we want acceptance, we want to belong. But oftentimes it's those things that we're trying to be when we're not trying to be or we're trying to be someone we aren't, that often lead to those like holes in our soul that make it difficult to be our best. So I start with that idea of trying to be authentic. So I try to, every morning I try to affirm who I am and talk about those things. And oftentimes the difficulty in that is, and I find this particularly as a teacher or a coach, where we're supposed to be the authority, the word I would use is that we oftentimes have a hard time being vulnerable. And that's one of the things that I really try to do. I try to leave the fear that the kids might have heard of Coach Adams making a mistake behind, right? Because if they know that I'm a person that maybe made a bad substitution, called a bad play, or wasn't prepared to teach that lesson that day or what have you, and that there's a chance to come back from that, then at the same time, some of the issues, I see with the young men at Loyola, it's a high academic, we've got a lot of high achievers at that school, but I see a level of anxiety in the youth today that really scares me. And I think part of that, again, gets back to what Jim says and being so performance-driven versus just being happy to be on the journey, right? That when I look back on my basketball career, I tell the kids all the time, I got a couple former players in here that I'm looking around the room now. I can't remember any scores. We won titles, and I don't know score, but I remember the bus rides or a meal at In-N-Out, or, right, it's the journey. And then the last part, what I think this world could use, and forgive me for being preachy, but I think the world could use so much more. One of my favorite things to say is understanding that we belong to something bigger than ourselves, right? That we're a cog, and not to take ourselves so seriously that we're willing to take away someone else's advantage for our own feeling good about ourselves. And it's trite, but you give, and the more you give, the more you receive. And so it's not easy, because the headlines tell, especially young men, I talk about this a lot, tell young men that success looks like the big car, a lot of money, multiple relationships with young ladies and things of that sort. And I like to try and be the counter to that. I think there's more to life than those things. And so I'm glad it's resonated with the guys that I've coached, and I definitely try to carry forward all the different great lessons I got from my coaches.
Yeah, and I think that authenticity is so important. When I was the Chief Girl Experience Officer at the Girl Scouts, we were trying to tell volunteers, please share your mistakes, because we are trying to make this a safe space for girls to fall down, get dirty, and get back up again and try the next thing, because there's another badge waiting, right? And girls in particular have such a thing about perfection. And you hate to watch them hold themselves back because they're worried about not doing that. I was talking to some parents who are both doctors, Stanford grads, all Americans, and they happen to be my sister and brother-in-law, and we're just at a family dinner, and I see this in their kids, right? This vision of who I need to be. And so I just asked my brother-in-law, I said, hey, tell me about a time when you really sucked at something, and it was so hard, and what did you do? And he looked at me like, what? This is the most random question. But I could see his kids were so interested to know this, because they had never heard him talk about this before, and it's critically important. So that's awesome that you do that for your kids. Great. And so Jamal's talking about a little bit what he's trying to create there, but is a positive, caring climate a prerequisite to developing amazing humans?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about people having an emotional tank, like the gas tank in a car, and we say kids have an emotional tank that needs to be filled. they're not going to be able to respond to challenges very well if they're not, if they don't have a full tank. And then we say kids of all ages. It's amazing how every time you enter a new stage of life, you have a great high school basketball experience or football experience, and now you got to go to college. And we're always looking for that acknowledgement that one of my favorite things is, I'm sure you've all heard it, but I bet not very many people know who said it first. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Anybody know who said that? It was President Teddy Roosevelt who first said that. And it's really true. If we want kids to be able to rise to the occasion, if we want kids to be able to support each other and be part of a great team, they've got to be accepted. There's a study that was done, is in the New York Times Magazine, about teams at Google. And they're looking at teams that really accomplished a lot, teams that didn't, and what was the difference. And all sets of teams had smart people, hard workers, all that stuff. The key was psychological safety. The teams that did well, people felt that they could be themselves. They could be vulnerable. They could say, hey, I don't know how to deal with this. What can I do? And the sports tradition is often this hard, snarly kind of, don't show me what you can do. Don't show me any vulnerability. And that is a barrier to performance.
Great. Thank you. Keith, you talk about being a community-driven program. What does that mean?
That means actually taking a look. Wow.
Ask the mic.
That means involving all aspects of the community. I mean, not going into a community thinking that you can solve all the problems by yourself. That it really does take a team. And so when we built the Falcon organization, one of the things that we wanted to incorporate was not just the kids, but also the parents, and not just the parents, but also the school teachers. But not just the school teachers, also the civic leaders, because each individual brought something to the table. And so our job was really to put everybody together and form that team to surround that baby. Our city councilmen and our supervisors have a vested interest in their constituents, and they want to make sure that where we live, where we work, and where we play is safe, but it's also productive. And so we brought them to the table and say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. How can you help us do what we do, and how can we help you look better as a politician? We talk to the teachers, because at the end of the day, we have inner city schools have maybe one teacher to 25, 30 kids. How can we help you do what you do better? How can we work together? So one of the things we started doing is monitor our kids in school on a weekly basis. I'll tell you a quick story. So our kids have to take a report to school and ask the teacher about their homework or classwork over our efforts to improve the respect to authorities and peers. We don't ask for grades because teachers are reluctant to do that. But we know that if they circle between 0 and 5 and our kids are getting 4 and 5s, they're doing well. If they're getting 0 1s, they're not doing well. And the rule is if you don't bring the report back, you don't play on Saturday. We need that report. And so in this one classroom, there were probably 6 football players, 2 on our team, and 4 from 2 other teams. And so it was well known that if you messed up in school, you don't play for the Falcons on Saturday. These 4 kids actually told our 2 kids, we're going to make sure you stay in trouble so that you can't get a report so you don't play. So the kids came back to us, and they don't have the report, and I'm doing my like Coach the Bear thing on those guys, and like, Coach, it's not our fault. These kids are like, if we don't do well, they know we won't play. I'm like, well, who are these kids? Who do they play for? So I found out who the coaches were, told the coaches what we do, what their kids said, and the coaches said, give me the form. My kids are going to do the same thing. The teacher didn't call me, called the other coaches and said, my entire classroom has changed. These 6 kids are now telling everybody, excuse the terminology, you better shut up, you better sit up, you better listen to what the teacher say, because if we don't play Saturday, we all gonna have a problem in here. It changed the whole culture of that classroom because now there was a goal that they all had to reach. Same thing with parents. I don't know a parent that want to have their kid grow up to be a drug dealer or alcoholic or someone walking the street. They want the best for their kids, even if they don't have the skill set to do it. So let's form a partnership, and let's take this thing that we all agree upon, the value values and their character, and let's teach them some things. Keep your hands to yourself don't mean don't hit. It also means don't steal. It also means if you can't take care of a baby, don't make a baby. That's what you want for your kid. That's what we want. So let's find synergy in all of that. Let's find a way to work. So that whole community thing is bringing everybody to the table, finding out exactly what they want, and how can we make that happen together.
That sounds amazing. You know, whenever you're going to somebody to say, hey, what do you need and how can we help? And this is what we're trying to do, and how can you help? That sounds like an amazing partnership. So thank you for sharing about it. Jamal, what role can sport play in people's lives if we do our jobs right?
I mean, I think the tagline, right? Better people, better athletes. But and to that end, right? It comes to my esteemed panelists. It comes down to like the roles we play in our lives, right? I gladly attribute my athletic career to teaching me to be, you know, hopefully the best husband. Married to my wife for 23 years, and she's my everything. I've got 2 kids, one that just graduated college 2 weeks ago. I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. I think athletics, again, gives us that safe space that you spoke about with the Girls Club, right? You know, I don't think anyone's ever been an athlete and gone undefeated for their whole life, right? So how do we deal with adversity? How do we deal with investing an inordinate amount of time in a process to have that process not work? And what do you do? Like, how do you formulate plan B? How do you, and on the other side, how do you celebrate success? How do you do that in a way that's classy? And how do you do it in a way that allows you to replicate that, right? I think, you know, the great thing about athletics and sports like hoops, you know, I'll go from my perspective, is that I tell our guys all the time, there's the next game, there's the next play, you make a great move and get a dunk, and now you're celebrating, they're going the other way, knock down a 3, we've actually lost that, you know, that possession. And so I think both, again, dealing with adversity in a way that allows you to dust yourself off, get up, and also deal with success going forward is in a way that's classy and allows it to be repeated, right? Do you have a process that allows your success to be repeated? Is it hard work? Is it details? It's all those things together. Those are some of the great things that we could get out of athletics that I think about. That's why, you know, though I spent 11 years working on Wall Street, I would suggest I tell this story. I always tell people I grew up and got a real job when I started teaching and coaching, and it's an amazing space to see the light bulb go off. Like that's, I hear about teacher compensation, and I do think our profession oftentimes is underpaid. But I think one of the things that I'll be able to take with me forever in my heart is those light bulb moments when a kid gets it, when they have put in the hard work and something works out to their success. And again, as I said, now they're coming back to you like, oh, I love that, coach. How do we repeat that? And giving them the tools to create that process to make a success repeatable is, you know, worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. And Jim, you guys talk about elevators. What is an elevator? And are they born? Are they made?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're talking about a different word than you think we're talking about. We're not talking about the elevator that goes up and down. We're talking about, we started in Silicon Valley, and so we feel the right to create a new word. It's elevator with an ER. If you think about it, there's no elevator, elevato. Anyway, when we say what we want youth sports to be is a place where we can develop better athletes, better people. Then the question is, what do you mean by better athletes, better people? And we have a definition. We've spent a lot of time thinking about it. It's a triple impact competitor, someone who elevates himself, elevates her teammates, and elevates the game and the larger community by the way you carry yourself. That's a great definition, and I think it covers a lot of ground, but it's a little clunky. So rather than saying, coaches, we want you to create triple impact competitors, we say, we want you to create elevators. So to a coach, like, Coach, two things we want from you. One is we want you to be an elevator. We want you to elevate your team. And secondly, we want you to teach them to be elevators. So, if you're in a situation where one of our concept is the emotional tank, and if you have a team where the coach is filling the emotional tank of the players, that's great. When you have a team where the kids are filling each other's emotional tank, that is out of sight. And that is when teams really bond, they really become great. And at the end of the season, you've got kids who are really sad because the season's over, not because they lost the last game, but because they're no longer part of this team that's endorsing them. So we really would like to see youth sports across the country, high school and youth sports, make their goal, the goal of this industry, to develop better athletes, better people. And shorthand for that is being an elevator. Right. Thanks for asking. I like talking about that.
Absolutely. I was intrigued when I heard that, and I was like, I immediately was able to get it because just the term elevator. So it's a great adoption of that word per se. Keith, you're in the trenches of the have-nots of sports. You've developed a portfolio of wraparound services to support your kids from every direction. Food, I know you're going to cook right after this for like 300 kids. Mobile homework stations, field trips to provide opportunities to see life outside of what they see every day. If 10 well-meaning funders walked into your office and asked you, what are the most important components of a sports program for underserved kids, what would you tell them?
Thank you for walking into my office. Thank you. First of all, that they matter. Kids need to know that they matter. It doesn't matter whether they are the quote-unquote superstar or the kid that may not hit the field. They're a part of that team, they're a part of our community, and they matter. We had a kid last year. Our youth football program is both age and weight governed, not unlimited weight. And so we had a kid on our team that would never make the weight. His parents understood that. He understood that. But his mom was like, I just got to get him out of the house. And so Brian came to be our team. Brian never missed a single practice, knowing full well that he would not play on Saturday. Brian never missed a single game, knowing full well that he would not play on Saturday. Brian was there to cheer, to encourage, to uplift, and he was accepted as part of that team like everyone else. He had a jersey number at our banquet that we had. He received the trophy. Our team last year won the championship. He received the championship trophy. He was a part of that team. Brian knew that he mattered, but we have to transfer that, not just that you matter on the football field, that you matter, period, that we have to speak life into a dead situation and let them know that when they leave the football field or the soccer field or the basketball court or the track or the tennis, they matter. It doesn't matter what hemisphere you live on, what country you live in, what state, what county, what city, what neighborhood, what block, what address you live in, you matter. That's the first thing we have to drive home to that kid, because you bring something of value just because you're there. Number two, kids should know that sports is a safe place to try and not succeed. I didn't misspeak. Sports is a safe place where kids can try and not succeed, because we have to teach them that it's not the success that matters, but it's the effort that matters. A great baseball player that hits 300 makes millions of dollars, but he misses 7 times. A basketball coach, if he had a shooter that was hitting 50% from the arc, he would love that guy, but he misses 1 out of 2 times. It's not the success, but it is the effort that's going to bring forth the results. And then finally, I would say that if you're going to be a great sports program, that when the kid leaves, they should leave with a memory and not a nightmare. That should be something that they can look back on and say, oh, how I remember whatever it is that they remembered. I think our most memorable time for our kids is when we have movie nights on Tuesdays, because it's only $5. And we take the kids to the movies. And it's to get those kids together, to laugh together, to joke together, to play together. They have a memory as opposed to a nightmare.
Thank you. A quick follow-up question to that is, we've got some people from colleges out in the audience. What can colleges do to provide a better bridge for underserved kids?
Come to the inner city, bring a van, load the van up with kids, take them to the campus, take them on tours. Don't start at the athletic center first. Have them interact with people who are that they mirror very well. Let those people tell them their story, and then take them through the library, take them through the lecture hall. I remember going to Royce Hall like, oh my God, it's like 700 seats in this place. How am I gonna make it here? And then take them to the athletic field. I'm a Bruin, but I have to give USC all the props. They have a wonderful program where they bring kids to the campus all the time. And they have the opportunity to tour that campus and touch that campus and feel that campus and believe that they could be a part of that campus.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to turn it over to the audience, so get ready for yours. Jim, you did 3,000 workshops last year. I'm going to get real practical for the people in the audience who are wondering, how do you get a workshop? How do you become part of a workshop? How much does it cost?
Yeah, so we have really a sales-oriented culture. We have people in 18 different chapters around the country, and they reach out to every school and youth sports organization in that area to say, hey, we want to work with you. And for the organizations that can afford it, we charge, because that means we started out, we did a workshop for early on for coaches and charged them a little bit of money, and hardly anybody showed up. We realized that if you make people pay more, they'll show up. And then we work really hard to raise money, and LA 84 has been a really important partner for us to work with organizations that can't afford that. So our website is www.positivecoach.org. Alan, you want to raise your hand? Alan Burkus, stand up for a second. Alan is... Alan's our executive director here. If anybody is interested in partnering with us, we see Alan afterwards, and it's like about workshops for free. Yeah, we like to do them for free as well. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And you have online resources as well.
Yeah.
Great. Well, now I think is the time to let you all ask questions. I know I use this as my own personal conversation time, which I was happy to do, but love to pass it up to anybody who has a question.
Hands? Yep.
Good morning, Andy Sanford, Loma Linda Academy. It's a high school. So my concern is the parents. You spoke a lot about community involvement. How do we get the parents to be involved, but not? They got it. Yeah.
They got it. They got it.
I think it's time for you,
We have a mandatory parent meeting in our organization. A kid cannot receive his equipment until we have a mandatory parent meeting. And in the parent meeting, we talk about who we are, what we do, what our objectives are, what our expectations from our coaches, what our expectations from our parents, what our expectations of our parents. And we're real clear about what we need to talk about. Again, we're in the hood, but the hood is not in us. So you're not coming to our practice sagging. You're not coming to our practice with your pajamas on. We're going to speak to your kids as if we would speak to our own kids. We're going to speak to them out of love. We will never curse them, but yes, we will be. Yes, there's a form of discipline that we will use as a teaching tool. That this is the standard of who we are. This is expectation. This is the model, and all relationships are not meant to work. So if what we're talking about doesn't fall within what you're looking for as an organization, don't come. It's just that simple. This is who we are. This is what we're going to do. This is our standard of excellence. And this is what we're going to expect from you. And if our expectations for you match your expectations from us, then let's form a happy family. If not, we have our checkbook waiting. We have refunded parents with the last game of the season. Like, thank you very much, your kid can play, but I want you to give $100. I'm giving you $100 just to stay away for the last game. Because there's a standard that we will operate in, good or bad, right or wrong. This is who we are, this is what we do, and you're either with it or you're not with it. And if you're not with it, by your actions, we're gonna let you know you're not with it by our actions. Zero tolerance. Well, I don't know if, nothing.
I would just add that I think at some level, right, there's got to be, I'll go back to my business days, there's got to be a partnership, right? And at some levels, I think, again, I'll use the word vulnerable. We do have parent meetings. I talk very candidly with the parents about, what my expectations are. I also tell them very candidly that particularly I have high school kids and typically sophomores, juniors, or seniors, that this is that area where they have that rites of passage. So I'll deal directly with their kids, and I'll tell them if your son is upset about his playing time or what have you, I will stay as late as possible, and I'll speak with him one-on-one. He's there every day. I'm there every day. In that interaction, we have the most information than the parents have. And then there's a protocol beyond that. But as has been stated before, obviously there's never going to be 100%, I think, beautiful relationships with every parent. And sometimes I say this to my wife often, that I have a working relationship with a family. Like, I'll love the kid, and the mom and dad might be very difficult, but I understand that my investment and my job is in the young man. I don't teach boys or coach boys. It's in the young man, and that's where my focus is, and I try to mitigate the other parts and keep them at bay as best I can.
Dean Lamont, St. Mary's College of California. Keith, it sounds like you're doing really important work. In your talk, you mentioned instruments that you used, and I'm intrigued by that. What type of instruments are you using? I'm sure that metrics are important to a program like yours. What types of instruments are you using? What are you measuring? Psychological development, moral development, or more outcome measures, contact with juvenile?
So one of the things that we do in our program, there's another component to our program called MIT, which stands for Men in Training. Ironically, Mr. Moore was one of the first participants in our Men in Training program. And so we meet weekly, and what we take a look at is several factors. We have a conversation with the parent, and we want to know from the parents, what are their strengths, what are their challenges. We want to know what is the outcome objective that you have for this young man, and how do we help get there? So we measure that a couple of different ways. First of all, we're dealing with young men who have some, talked about before, some emotional challenges. We say in our program, you're as sick as your most hidden secret, and you're stuck at the age of your pain. So we may have kids that are 14 years of age or 13 years of age, but emotionally they are stuck at 5 or they're stuck at 6. So we have to begin to find out what's really going on and help them move from that point of pain to help them grow up. So then we begin to look for, particularly we're looking for when that child finds itself in an adverse situation, how do they handle that situation, and how do we help them move from that? That's one. So that's the emotional thing that we're looking at. Then we have to look at academics. Are you not doing well in school simply because the culture that you're in, or are you not doing well in school because there's some learning challenges there? Are you not reading because you just never learned to read, or are you not reading because there are some challenges going on? You may be dyslexic. We don't know. So we have to look at that thing. The other motivational tool that we use, again, is a school progress report, but there's also what we hope to have is a white elephant. We have a mobile homework trailer that goes to every single practice with us. If you're not doing what you need to do in school, you go to the homework trailer and you do homework during practice time. Our goal is by the end of the first month, no one's in the homework trailer. It's just there to be there as a deterrent, for lack of a better term. So we look at the emotional side. We look at their school portion, and then of course we want to get a gauge whether or not there's any alcohol, any drug addiction any drug challenge that we may face, any gang problems that we may face. But again, it depends upon that child. Every child that quote unquote lives in the hood don't necessarily have hood issues. So we have to measure, what's going on with that child individually.
Terrence Balaja, Goldman Sachs. And in full disclosure, Jamal Adams is my mentor, and all my success I attribute to him, and everything he says up here is exactly true. He lives it as well. So I'll give that as the background for my question. And I think about the concept of playing sports, and you talk about developing as a human and developing your character through the context of sports. You think about the metrics that are used to measure success in sports: points, rebounds, wins, college scholarships. what other metrics can we create or can we point to so that kids can measure their success or their personal growth of their character through sports outside the traditional ones that seem to be the focus of the limelight?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Not that all the others weren't good too. I played basketball, not at the kind of level a lot of people here did, but I've always loved basketball, and the idea of a good defensive sequence, or in baseball, a good at bat. You can hit the ball really, really hard, and it goes right at somebody. What constitutes a good at bat? What constitutes a good defensive play? I know Pat Riley used to talk about deflections, not steals, because steals would cause you to overreach and foul somebody or get out of position. But can you deflect the ball? So what are the similar kinds of things? And I think one of the really interesting pieces of research is that kids don't usually transfer the lessons they take from sports to the rest of their life. They work really, really hard to make the starting five on a basketball team, and they often need coaches to say, wow, do you guys ever see what Billy here did, how hard he's been working, and now he can drive on his weak hand? And what would it be like if you put that much energy into your math scores to bring them up? Because kids don't automatically think that, oh man, if I worked as hard as math. So this concept of being a triple impact competitor, being an elevator, we really want that to become widespread so that in every situation you're in, you look around and say, how can I make this situation better? I don't think I did justice to your question, and I'm going to think about it more. Does anybody else want to try that?
I'll take that. No, we were working on it at Girl Scouts, for sure. But I would say resilience and do your teammates want to still be your teammates next year are two of the things that we were just working on how to measure. And I know that Carol Dweck is working a little bit on the resilience factor coming out of Stanford University, but and they're hard to measure. But those were two areas, yeah.
So, yeah, that made me think. I mentioned before emotional tank. Are you, one of the ideas we have is we call it double vision. It's also called looking through a window or looking through a mirror. And the idea is that when things go well, even if you're the one who made them go well, you look through a window and you say, you're spreading the credit around all the people who helped make it work. When things go bad, even if it's not your fault, you look in the mirror and say, what could I have done better? So if you have that kind of double vision, then you're the kind of person that I want on my team, and I think most employers would like to have someone like that on a team.
Let me answer that real quick. For us, one of the things that's real important is that the lessons that we're teaching actually become part of their lives. Oftentimes, when we would travel outside of our areas to play football games, people would always, and even in our areas, people would always say, there's something different about those Falcon kids. There's just something different about the Falcon kids. And that tells me that they're actually living the values that we're also teaching. So it's one thing to just say something. It's another thing to actually see it be part of their lives. I had a mother come to me one day, and she was crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? She said, he came home and he cleaned up. After one of our Saturday camp, I'm like, well, why are you crying? You should be happy. It's like, no, these are tears of joys. Because one of the things we tell our kids is this, after every practice is simply simple. If someone does something nice for you, you ought to have enough common sense to say thank you. Men say thank you two ways. We say thank you with our words, and then we say thank you with our actions. If your words are not followed up with actions, then your thank you mean nothing. So go home and do something that you know you're supposed to do without being asked. And so he finally went home and he cleaned up. And so for us, how do we know it's really working? How can we measure that? How can we see that? Is when they actually incorporate those values into their lives, both on the field as well as off the field.
And I'll add my last piece. I know we're bumped up against the time. I think the other way to see that we're successful, or do we help young people learn how to maintain and develop healthy relationships. I think in my whole life, or I think about Terrence, or even my time on Wall Street, right, I was a salesman. And I tell people, I think being a good salesman are about two things. Can you build, create, develop relationships that matter? And then typically, how do I get someone to be interested in me is, can I tell a good story? And I think communication, I think that's the other part about it. Like, are you in a position, and sports can help you do that, to articulate what your values are, communicate them clearly, find commonality with other people, find your intersectionality with other people, build a relationship built with stitches, because you both understand that there's a common good in space. I would like to think, I've never seen any of these young men that play for the Falcons, but what they're getting out of their development program is now, when they're away from that program, they have the self-esteem and the self-confidence to step out, to extend their hand and to meet someone brand new. Like that, I think for the young people that I deal with that are on Snapchat and Instagram and living their lives through their devices, a lost art has been the development of a new relationship. And so I like to think that with basketball, because you got to play with 5 people. I always tell my guys, there's no one-on-one NBA. You got to figure out how to play with the other guys on the floor and your teammates. That then you have to learn how to be outward. And I think that's another great growth space that can happen for new sports.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your questions. And thank you to our panelists for joining us this morning. We'll pass it back to you.